Today on the Hobby Bench, I'll be talking about Resist from Salt and Pepper Games. Resist is a solo game from Salt and Pepper Games. It's themed on the Maquis guerrilla war in Spain fighting against the Franco regime after the Spanish Civil War and World War II. And it's an interesting time, and to be frank, I'm really not well versed in the history at all of that period. So if folks know of some good books to read about that time, please feel free to put in the comments. But as I mentioned, it's a solo game. It essentially has a really heavy push your luck slant to it. You're going to try to complete as many missions as possible, and eventually you're going to stop the game before a turn completely resolves. At that point, then you're going to sort of see how you score, with the missions that you completed versus a table that's in the rule book, which can be, basically from a draw, a minor victory. Now, counting this, of course, is many ways that you can lose the game outright. Now, there's several ways to play the game. One is basically creating a random deck of missions, but it also has this scenario book. The scenario book sort of split between two different things. One are specific scenarios themselves, and they have usually a specific objective. You're just going to try to eliminate as many enemies as possible, or complete missions that might have a combined defensive score of 35, etc. The scenario book also has different historic scenarios. And these model themselves after a certain historical period from the late 40s to early 50s, fighting for the liberation of Spain. And commonly there are a subset of mission cards based on that particular era. Now for your typical game, you're going to draw from a random pool of missions based on the era itself. Now you start out with era 1, and you'll move up to era 2 and then era 3. And as missions are completed and you move through the eras and complete missions and move through this deck, the missions have become more difficult or have more severe penalties for failing them. At the heart of the gameplay, you have a hand of Maquis rebels, and then you're going to select a mission to go after. And basically, you're going to play your rebel cards, and you're going to total your attack score compared to their defensive score. If it's equal to or greater, then you succeeded the mission. If you succeed a mission, you'll score victory points equal to what they have on the card. Now, the monkey wrench in this is that each mission has a random assortment of enemy cards. Now, they all have a variety of abilities. Some of them basically have to be defeated before you can actually apply your attack value versus a defensive target. So essentially, you basically have to defeat the combined score. Some of them, example like this guard here, this has to be eliminated before you can eliminate other enemies. You'll have some that can destroy some Maquis that you have in play, or the ones that you've used. Other ones are going to bring more guards into your location or shift guards to another location. Of course, you also have these counter guerrillas. They lead to another special way of losing the game. And I really like this mechanism here. It's pretty clever. So if you fail a mission, basically that area is locked out and you have less options to choose for the following turns. If you fail a second mission, well, you lose the game outright. Play is in rounds. We're going to draw a deck of cards that are going to represent the rebels that you have available to tackle a mission. At this point, you're going to be at the planning phase, followed by the attack phase, and finally a cleanup phase. Now, before the cleanup phase, you have an opportunity to basically just throw in the towel and see how you scored and basically see how well you did. Or you can try to push your luck and just go for another round. Many of your rebels will have abilities. They could shift enemies around or expose them to get a better idea of what the opposition you're going to face, or potentially allow you to draw maybe more rebels to help out. But once you've committed any cards to planning, then you have to make a decision to go after a specific mission. So you could, let's say, expose these cards here and then realize that, oh my gosh, I just don't have enough defense to actually beat this score out. I might have to go for another mission. Once you decide a mission to go after, you're going to continue playing cards that you have, and you're going to be using attack abilities for those cards. You'll total up the attack value of the rebel cards you played and allot them among the enemies in the mission itself. And you'll reduce your attack value as you eliminate cards. And if enough is left over to equal the mission defense of that, well, then you succeed and you complete the mission. If you successfully complete it, or even if you fail it, basically those enemy cards will be picked up. You'll draw another mission, and you'll draw enemies that would be equal to what's on that mission card. Now, many Enemies and missions have additional abilities that take an effect in play if they're wiped out or if they survive the fight. A particularly vicious card, as we talked about here, is the Counter Guerrilla. If they survive, you're going to draw from a special deck of civilian cards, and they're going to either represent 1 or 2 casualties, sometimes maybe even 3 casualties. If you ever get 5 civilians killed, you lose the game immediately. Now, I love the theme of this. The idea is that even if you succeed in the mission, if the fight caused so many innocent deaths, people are going to turn against the rebellion movement. It forces you to play or spend those sparse attack numbers to eliminate threats against the civilian population. And this really makes for an interesting challenge. You also will get spies. They're essentially a dead card in your hand. But if you ever get to a point where you need to draw an entire hand of spies, basically 5 cards, you lose the game. Essentially, the insurgency has been so badly infiltrated, no one trusts each other, and it just sort of falls apart. At the end of the round, you'll discard any rebels that you're holding and draw a new hand of 5 cards. If you need more cards, basically you'll shuffle cards that you've discarded and then continue to draw it until a full hand. Now, at first glance, you think, well, it's unlikely that you'll ever get a hand completely full of spies. However, as you play, you'll see your deck of potential rebels slowly deplenish. And see how that works out is that basically, when you choose to play rebels in the planning or the attack phase, you have a choice to play them either hidden, in which you can use them later on, or you can play them revealed. Now, they're going to usually have different abilities, but commonly they'll have a higher attack value or maybe a more aggressive type of attacks revealed. If it's using a hidden role, they'll go in your discard pile and be thrown in for another mission later. Once you play a revealed rebel, though, it's discarded into a different stack. And essentially, it's just removed from the game. That person is either killed or captured or escaped the country. Basically, they're no longer safe, so they can sort of go into hiding. Now, this choice of playing your rebels, either hidden or revealed, really, this is the bread and butter of the game. It can be an agonizing choice at times, and it effectively captures that feel of an underground rebellion. You've got this pool of volunteers, and their skills are not from an inexhaustible supply. If you make a commitment to complete a mission openly, you're more likely to succeed in the short term, but then you have this loss of people that makes that rebellion harder to continue and sustain over time. Now, there's a more advanced setup, creating your deck of partisans. Basically, in the base game, you'll randomly remove a portion from the game, and then the remainder will be for your deck that you'll use to create your deck of rebels to play. But you can also play drawing 2 rebels, and then you sort of choose which one you're going to keep to go into your deck and which one that you'll basically remove from the game. And the idea is here is that you're just sort of looking through the first 4 missions that you have and sort of deciding what abilities, either hidden or revealed, or what they have that would be effective for trying to complete the mission. But this will only work so far, because as you succeed in the mission, you're basically going to have a random mission that's going to be in this deck, and you really don't know how difficult those are going to be as you move along. So you've got an idea to sort of predict a little bit how well you can do, but as things progress further, you get spiral more and more out of control. So this is going to allow you to carefully determine which partisans can tackle most of the missions before you. But you're going to get some curveballs, and as you complete missions, as I mentioned, they're replaced and those enemies are revealed. But it does allow you to tinker a little bit with assembling your deck of rebels at the start of the game. So my closing thoughts, it's a really fun game. It's sort of challenging to sort of figure out how you allocate your rebels. And I really like that choice that you have of either playing them and using their hidden abilities or playing them revealed. And this is really sort of the crux of it. You have exceedingly little room for failure. Basically, if you fail 2 missions, you lose the game immediately. I also really enjoy the idea of this other condition of losing is basically of having so much collateral damage, you kill off so many civilians that you lose the game immediately. And I love this idea of this game here. I love that sort of mechanism because, yes, you can aggressively go after a mission, you can kill guards, you can make a big ruckus, you can basically defeat the mission, But then if you're careless about that, you're not really spending time to eliminate the threats against the civilians, you're going to lose the game. And I like that's just that other little curveball that you have sort of thrown in there, that, when you see a counter guerrilla pop up, you're thinking, oh my gosh, I really just can't let that slide. And is that agonizing choice? As I said, you've got between 1 and 3 civilians. So you might be sitting on maybe 3 civilian deaths. It's been a long, bloody campaign. You have to think about that. Do I really need to maybe just try to complete that mission and then just end the rebellion? Or do I just, push my luck and maybe just not address this counter guerrilla? And if you do that, you can lose the game outright. And that's just an agonizing choice with that. And I really do like that idea that you just sort of have to look at seeing the opposition and thinking, I've got to spend some time to reduce the potential collateral damage, reduce the chance of killing the civilian population. So I'm going to have to eliminate that one and maybe just let this mission fail and just try my luck somewhere else. And that's really a very interesting choice and part of this game. You're going to play your rebel cards. You have a choice to play them either hidden or you can play them revealed. And that's a very interesting choice and interesting design they have in the game. And I like that point that you're really sort of agonizing how you're going to allocate these rebels that you have, these precious few individuals with their special abilities, and trying to defeat the enemies and still maintain this rebellion, still keep the fight going. And as you go, you're going to see more and more exhaustion of your rebels. They're just removed from the game. They're either killed or captured. It's just harder and harder to sustain that battle and that fight against basically an endless supply of enemies. And all the while you're sort of balancing out, trying to make victories, but not lose against the population itself. Or likewise, that as you get more and more cards that you're losing for your rebels, you're going to slowly accumulate more and more spies and make it to the point too that you just basically draw a handful of spies. And at that point, you're just locked out. You can't do anything, and your whole rebellion collapses. There's just really lovely choices in this game. I really enjoy it. And I like out of the box, too, that you've got so many different ways to play. The base game itself is very casual. You have a random assortment of missions that you can have. You can just do a quick random assortment of your rebels to play. And there's a lot of variety of the abilities that they have. And so that's one thing to sort of noodle through and try doing that. Or likewise, too, that you can decide, I'm going to really try to customize my deck a little bit. I'm going to see the missions that I've got and sort of go through and sort of make choices, which ones I want to sort of keep and formulate my deck. And, maybe which ones I'm going to go ahead and let those guys go. And then hopefully you'll create a good enough deck to handle most of these missions. There's still going to be these curveballs because once they're gone, you'll get a new mission that you just have no idea what it's going to be. You don't have any idea what type of opposition you're going to come against. And that sort of makes it sort of fun, how well you can sustain that. And in addition, as I said, they've got the scenario book. You've got some specific challenges that you can go after and say, look, I really want to see how long I can go or how many enemies can I possibly kill, and where I decide to quit the game. And they do have these small little mini campaigns, which is a little interesting too. So I'm going to have to say, man, for the price point of the game, there's so much gameplay in here. As a solo player game, I find it very engaging. It's an interesting period of history that I really just don't know much about, and sort of playing it again, I sort of realized, it's something that it sort of piqued my interest a little bit, and maybe dig in a little bit more about this period of history. I'll also mention about the card art too. It's more of a graphic novel style, and I like it. It's not overtly gritty, but it's serious enough to convey the type of conflict that you're sort of modeling here. Overall, I have to say that Resist, it's a great game. And I think if solo gaming is your bag, it's definitely something to get on the tabletop.